as important as it is to know when transition services begin, it's also important to know when they end. And there are several reasons why and how transition services can end, and one of them begins with just whether or not you exit out of special education.
Right. So theoretically, a student, and again, let's back up, another area where your state law could be somewhat different than the federal law.
Just to make it easy.
Just to make it easy to follow, right? So here's why we say check into your state law to find out what age your state goes through. But here's the first way that your child could stop receiving transition services. If they were of the age where they're required to receive them, so let's say you have a 16 or 17-year-old student who's got an IEP, and that child has been getting transition services, okay, through their IEP. And then that the triennial occurs, and which means the time every 3 years where a school district conducts a comprehensive evaluation of the student in all suspected areas of disability, and the team meets and says, wow, based on this testing, we don't think this student is eligible for special education services anymore. Well, if the student now is not going to receive an IEP, they also would not be receiving their transition services. So theoretically, that's one way it could happen. That's not a very common thing in my experience to occur. You don't usually see juniors and seniors in high school suddenly being exited from special education services, but it does happen. And in that kind of circumstance, you'd have a student who received transition services whose transition services have now ended.
And may I add that hopefully if and when that does happen, it's happening for all the right reasons.
I hope so.
Okay, because yes. I've also seen cases where things can, maybe the child really shouldn't be exiting, but they get exited. And
yes.
You have to be aware of that. If you're going to be exiting from special education, the data has to support that those services are no longer needed.
And certainly the parent would have the right to disagree with that and exercise their rights to do so. Right. So that's a very good point, Julie. Another way that a student who was receiving transition services could have those services terminated is if they receive a diploma. They graduate from high school and receive a diploma from their high school. They finish their traditional senior year or maybe an additional year, and they are issued a high school diploma and are moving on to the next level of their lives. So in that kind of a circumstance, you would have a student whose transition services also have terminated. So that's the second way that that can happen, okay? Now, the last way it can happen is that your child, has now exceeded the age that your state law provides is the limit of special education services. And this varies so much, Julie, from state to state. In some states, it's through the school year of your 21st birthday. In other states, it's through age 25 or 23. And so if you have a student who has an IEP, who's been receiving transition services, and then they age out, that's the term that often is used in the cases, then that student had been receiving transition services and is no longer eligible for transition services because they're really no longer eligible for special education services either.
And it would be so much easier if, federally speaking, there was just one age and that's it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, even though we try to simplify things here at yourspecialeducationrights.com, this is once again one of those situations where each state is different. So it's very important that you check with your state as to when that age cutoff is.
And the easiest way to do that is call your state Department of Education and ask them the question, until what age is my student entitled to receive special education services? And they should be able to tell you that.